Welcome to Leaping Larry's Revolutionary Reading Theatre.
Right, welcome to the reading today, comrades. It really is very, very simple. And like, if you have the money to go to Hawaii and get surgery or whatever you need to do, you have the money to go somewhere else. It's that simple. Anyway, if you want to catch what I said about Hawaii, it's on the VOD. I will leave it up because I don't delete important VODs. Yeah, I'm gonna start doing the reading earlier in the day, Mama. That's my idea now. So, we are now going to be starting the chapter. We're reading On the Juche Philosophy by Comrade Kim Jong-il. And this has been about, of course, the Juche philosophy. Now, last time when we were talking about the socio-historical principles of the Juche philosophy, we learned and heard the word creative stand and independent stand. We heard those words used a couple times. Now we are going to get into what the independent stand and the creative stand means, what are the parts of that, and how that is necessary for revolution. And just to premise this before I begin, I will just say that these guiding principles are generalized principles, meaning that they apply to revolution anywhere. And if you want to gauge the successfulness or the position in time that a revolution is at, you would judge it by these criteria. So, let us begin. The guiding principles of the Juche idea are the guide to establishing the Juche orientation, aka the independent orientation, in party and state activities, and in all spheres of the revolution and construction. They are explicit fundamental principles which must be observed in successfully carrying out the revolution and construction by adhering to the independent and creative stands and enhancing the role of ideological consciousness. In order to apply the Juche idea to the revolution and construction, it is essential to observe thoroughly the guiding principles of the Juche idea. So the first guiding principle is that the independent stand, as mentioned in those socio-historical principles, must be maintained. If the revolution and construction are to be carried out as required by the Juche idea, independence must be maintained and realized in party and state activities. The leader laid down the principles of Juche in ideology, independence in politics, self-sufficiency in the economy, and self-reliance in defense. Those are the principles that every revolution basically must adhere to, as the principles of realizing independence. Because of that reason, because they are principles for realizing independence itself, which is, of course, what the fight for communism, socialism, that's what that fight is. The principles of Juche, independence, self-sufficiency, and self-reliant defense are the guiding principles of realizing independence in the spheres of ideology, politics, the economy, and defense. So the first part of the independent stand is Juche in ideology. And now, when I will actually talk about, when we get a little bit into this, I will talk about the relevance of this to, like, USSR, for example. So, establishing the Juche orientation in ideology is the primary requirement of the masses' revolutionary struggle for independence. Revolution and construction are humanity's conscious activities. Establishing the Juche orientation in thinking, therefore, is the only way to establish the Juche orientation in politics, the economy, defense, and all other domains. And why is that? Of course, that's because humanity acts, as we discussed before in the socio-historical principles, that's because humanity acts through their ideological consciousness, right? It's not, and these changes in politics, in the economy, in the defense, and all other aspects of human life are not brought about spontaneously, right? These changes don't just happen in society. They are caused by the activity of humanity, who is guided by their ideology. Their ideology is what determines all their activities. Whether their activities are directed towards the interest of the bourgeoisie or reactionary interests, as we call it, depends on whether they have reactionary ideology. And whether they serve revolutionary forces and stand on their own as an independent political force, of course, depends on if they have revolutionary ideology. And that thing is the key factor in every single revolution. What made revolution break out was not where capitalism was most highly developed, as Marx predicted. It's not where the chain of imperialism is the most weakest, where Lenin predicted, and although that plays a role, but it can break out even where the chain of imperialism is strong, if the revolutionary consciousness is sufficient. We're on a little ad break here. I'm going to fill my water up. And also independence from even other ostensibly revolutionary movements. Damn, you are. I'm impressed, Bob, how much you're using ostensibly. Let me fill up my water while we're on an ad break. 1 second. Hold tight. Play those sound bites.
It's all for one motherfucker and one motherfucker for all motherfuckers everywhere, you know what I'm saying?
He's a communist.
Oh, really?
Yep, big communist, big communist.
Oh.
Fuck the demagogues! Hey, everybody.
Long live the People's Revolution!
Guess who's freed? Guess who's been freed? Look. He's free. He's out now. She's out, everybody. She's done it, and she's being a very good girl these past 3 days. Oh, she's just running around the room here. She's been out for the past 3 days. No accidents at all. So far. Not a single accident since she's got out. She's doing so good. I'm so proud of her. She's done great. Hey, Bug. You done good, Bug. You done good. I thought you'd all like to see that Bug is back. And now she will be sitting here quite frequently, probably. Especially when she's out of running around energy. Alright. We are back. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so let's continue this now. To establish the Juche orientation in ideology means... So this now is what it means by establishing Juche orientation in ideology. Oh, you're gonna do that on camera? Okay, well, then we'll wait. We'll wait till you're done. We'll wait till you're done with that. There. There, you're good now. Okay. There we go. Bug's back. Bug's back and she's being polite again. Right, Bug? Right, Bug? You're cute, Bug. Okay, so what does it mean to establish Juche orientation? Well, to establish Juche orientation and ideology simply means having the consciousness that one is the master of the revolution and construction, thinking and doing everything centering on the revolution in one's own country, and acquiring the viewpoint and attitude of solving all questions by one's own talent and initiative. That's all. That's right there. What I just said is what it means to establish Juche orientation and thinking. So you see, I want you to take note here and understand that, like, so it's not telling us to copy what Kim Jong-il or Kim Il-sung did. And it's also telling us not to copy what other revolutionaries did. It's telling us to wage revolution with the first criteria being your own conditions, your own history, the struggle going on in your own community. Because while Marx can give us a great deal of information through his generalized experience, there's many questions that Marxism and Leninism cannot answer regarding our conditions here in modern day North America, where we're fighting against settler colonialism and stuff. Some of their experiences can be used to inform our own, but we have unique questions, right? We have unique things that need to be solved. And I think even more importantly is we need to fight against the chauvinistic idea that every single country, every single movement must study Marx and Engels and Lenin in order to successfully build a socialist society, which I think goes against exactly what Marx and Engels discovered, right? Which is that the movement to build communism is inevitable. That doesn't mean that humans don't participate and make it happen, but it does mean that it's inevitable because that is the direction that humanity develops towards. See? Related to that as well is this right here. I just wrote this the other day because I thought it was funny. 14 likes though. I'm very disappointed at the amount of likes this got. I thought this was comparatively. There was one person who this is actually in response to something I saw written the other day where somebody was like, I think it was something like this. Let me just see if I can find it. It was a fellow comrade. Oh, it was on. Look at me. I can't stop myself. It was on. I think it was on like one of the Dan Simpson things. You miss a lot of my tweets? Damn. Maybe I'm being suppressed. Was on. Yeah, here it is right here. Actually, right here. This is what it is right here. This was the thing I was talking about. So this person. People should learn about communism and Marxism from Marx, Engels, Fanon, Lenin, Nkrumah, Stalin, Rodney, Jackson, Sankara, and Mao, and not Twitch streamers. I get the sentiment here, but I just want. But so my sort of response to this is the idea that you should only read existing books and cannot get anything from revolutionaries online or in real life is an expression of book worship, which Mao himself warned us about. It also ignores that Marx, Lenin, or Mao would definitely be streaming or blogging if they struggled in modern times. Right? Like, I think it's just, yeah, exactly, Bob. They could have just said people should read more of these people. Not people should learn about, like, this is, and this is a fantastic comrade. It's just that, you know, sometimes I critique out of love for wanting to see people understand, right? Exactly, frozen basalt. That's my point. Like, if Lenin and Stalin or any of them were around in modern times, they would absolutely have used the existing platforms to try and talk to people. That's why they use newspapers, right? Like, that'd be like saying back in the day, like that'd be like saying in Lenin's time, like you should read Marx and Engels and not read this Iskra newspaper. Fuck that, you know? Look at Marx and Engels, not at this Lenin character. Exactly. Marx and other dead theorists didn't tell us what to do. They gave us tools in figuring out what we should do. The living discussion, our present conditions are vital in actually using what any of those theorists have to offer. Yep. And the best like Marxist Leninist theorists who have existed were able to create their own, like every successful one, they were able to create their own like ideas and forge a path for revolution that way, not by simply parroting Marx and Lenin, not by simply like repeating what they did and what they said, by taking what they said and did as a lesson and creating their own new theory, right? There we go. This is the one I was talking about. Like a post book worship. It's so good. Like, yes, which is essentially what Juche is telling us with this principle right here. That to establish Juche in orientation and ideology means having the consciousness that one is the master of the revolution and construction, thinking and doing everything centering on revolution in one's own country, and acquiring the attitude and viewpoint of solving all questions by one's own talents and initiative. Exactly, Bob. Exactly. Because people get they're treating they treat these theories and these existing things as a dogma rather than a guide to action. And like maybe I know like a lot of people will say that and then go on to do the exact same thing they just said was bad because they don't understand what that means, right? Like they say the words without actually getting it. It's like a dogma is something you treat as like a religious holy text that cannot be violated or like cannot be you cannot like examine creatively, right? And guide to action is something that you read and it's a generalized experience or a particularized experience or both together in the sense of most Marx works. And you take those lessons and create your own path. You create your own ideology, your own relevant theory. That's what a guide to action is. Yeah. Yep, mama, and those people are reading those people are book worshiping. And that's not how communists behave. Like the if you a good communist isn't just like, oh, if you have to read the theory or you don't understand it, right? Like if you're a communist, you should be able to educate other people and make them into communists, right? You don't have to convince every single person to fucking read Marx and Engels and Lenin in order to spread communist ideology and support for communism. You can do that by just educating people about the things, right? You can do it even without you can really do it like without even mentioning like Marx and Engels if you have to. And sometimes that's a good place to start with some people. If you can normalize those names, all the better, right? But that's not necessary for getting people on the path to a better understanding. So the reason why this is important, it goes on to say, and now I want to just remind you about something that I said on IDan Simpson's stream. If you were there for my discussion with IDan, I talked about how we as scientific socialists really should be working to separate the concept of country from the concept of nation, and make sure that we understand that they are two distinct concepts, and that we should stop, as was common in the past, that we should stop treating them as synonymous terms. That country and nation should be separate terms with separate definitions, and like with a country, you can have a country that is a nation, but has many nations within it as well, like China. You can have a country that is not a nation, but is a prison house of nations. Oh, you're going back there. Okay. But it's a prison house of nations and itself is not a nation, like Canada, right? Canada and the USA are countries, but they're not nations. And then you can have a place like Korea where you have two countries and one nation. So you see, I think those are some examples of the importance of why we really need to understand that there should be a separation between the concepts of nation and country. And I also like to push back against the idea that nationhood in general arose through the contest against feudalism. That's where European nations came from. Yes, that's how European nations arose. But nations here in Americas, nations existed here that were not struggling against feudalism and were complex, had democratic centralism and everything else. In many instances. So nation is not necessarily something that emerged simply through the struggle against feudalism, but it is something created by the masses. It's more progressive than, I think, in many senses, it's like more progressive than what settlers and Europeans in the past have been able to understand, because we know they have a different like understanding of all this stuff. Yes, it is, Blatt, and that's why I think like Juche is something that I feel like if people actually like listen to what this is saying, they would realize, oh wait, I'm doing the thing that revolutionaries are telling us not to do. Hopefully. So the party and the people of a country are the masters of the revolution in that country. And to carry out the revolution in one's country successfully is the basic mission of the party and the people of one's country. Hello, Radisby, welcome in. The world revolution, too, will only be successful when the revolution in every country is successful. And when, on this basis, mutual support and cooperation is given. For this reason, the party and people of every country must firmly establish Juche orientation and ideology, and carry out the revolution and construction in their country in a responsible manner with the attitude of masters. So that's why establishing Juche orientation is important, for one reason. In order to establish the Juche orientation and ideology, it is necessary to equip oneself with the revolutionary idea of the working class and the policy of one's party. So notice how he's not saying here, equip oneself with the books of Marx and Lenin. Notice how he didn't say that here. He says equip oneself with the revolutionary ideas of the working class. Because Marx and Lenin's ideas all come from that, right? and they represented the leader, and like they represent the leader of that idea because they were able to like to sort of understand it and direct it into a what do you call it? And direct it into like a positive thing, right? Same with Marx. Like all of these ideas existed, and Marx really like was able to kind of like I don't know how to put it, but like the ideas that Marx was espousing like already existed in the world and like in the among the masses, and Marx really was able to sort of like consolidate it and then put it in a way that like yeah, thank you, exactly, that consolidated it and put it and like made it into a way that like the masses were inspired or were more inspired to follow behind, right? Which is that is the relationship between leaders and the people. Which is why we also should not negate leadership as well. The working class is an independent class, and their revolutionary thinking is an independent thinking. Only when one is equipped with the revolutionary thought of the working class will one be able to carry out successfully the revolution and construction, however difficult and complex the situation is, with the awareness that one is the master of the revolution. The policy of the Revolutionary Party of a country, the embodiment of the revolutionary thinking of the working class, is the guide to the revolution and construction in that country. One must equip oneself with one's party policy and regard it as their guideline of thinking and practice. And here in the West, read your fucking party policies, and if there's stuff in it you don't like, struggle against them. Because I guarantee you, if you're in the West and you're in the Communist Party of Canada, you're in the PSL, or you're in the Communist Party USA, all of your damn programs need some improvement. Okay? So, I'm just saying. Well, that's why this is generalized. That party, Cinnamon, it's very much possible that that party does not exist. However, this part right here does matter. The Revolutionary Party, that does not necessarily exist. The embryo of it might exist somewhere, right? But it doesn't necessarily exist. However, I think this is a good advice to take, even if you are, and hey, if you think PSL and Communist Party USA can be built up into a revolutionary party, especially if you're a fellow Linu comrade, anti-colonial comrade, I support that, right? And I support your idea that you think you might be able to push that further. Now, my position, or like, here's if I'm being real with you, I think what you would see emerge is you see First Nations revolutionary parties who will, of course, take the lead in revolution, and other parties like Communist Party USA or any ones that are able to improve their position and improve their party programs and stuff. Eventually, what you will see is them sort of like join up and become supporter parties. Right? Just like what happens in a fully established socialist society where you have multiple parties all working to help the Workers' Party build the society. And like in the case of many revolutions, you have multiple parties that will merge together, right? Like the Workers' Party of Korea was actually, in the past, many parties. And then that consolidated into, it wasn't the Workers' Party of Korea first, there was another one, and then that consolidated further into the Workers' Party of Korea. It merged with like a previously existing Social Democrat Party and some other things. So, I just want to say that this does still exist, even if the Revolutionary Party, as it will be, does not exist right now. And I will also say that splits aren't necessarily a bad thing. Absolutely not. Because once we're in a better position and things have been proven, it necessitates the splits coming back together. And or if they don't come back together, good. they weren't they weren't right for it, right? And so this part right here is still important. Again, if you're working in the Communist Party and you think you can push it into a more revolutionary direction, whether it's the Communist Party USA, the PSL, whatever it is, whatever it is, I'm not going to judge. If you think that you can better push it in a proper direction, this is still so important, right? Equip yourself with your party's policy, and you can regard it as the guideline in thinking and practice. And if that guideline is contrary to what you know or think is communist, get together with your comrades and push it in a proper direction. Because if you are in a communist party, they should have democratic centralism, which means you should have the means to work within your party to change these things. And if you don't, run like the fucking hills, because they're not a communist party. Democratic centralism is fundamental. If they don't follow democratic centralism, that's the point where you essentially have to be like, yep, nothing's gonna, at least it would be an uphill battle that is insurmountable given current conditions. If there's no democratic centralism that is actually respected. Which is what happened, why I left the Communist Party of Canada. Because there was absolutely, democratic centralism essentially was unable to touch the central leadership of the Communist Party of Canada. So, that's why I left it. And by the way, this whole thing was in response to sexual abuse that the leadership, members in the central leadership were responsible for, one particular member, while the rest of them defended it by like removing members who were questioning it, who were trying to try and bring an investigation onto this person. The party was removing members who were lower cadres in response. So essentially, everybody in the leadership of the Communist Party of Canada is either a sexual abuser or somebody who has defended them. Much like what like what the church did with its priests, that's what the Communist Party of Canada did with its central leadership. Instead of respecting democratic centralism and letting the democratic process actually go forward. Anyways, side rant over. Allow me to continue. Exactly, Marge, and that's why we left. That's why a lot of us left during that. When we say that we established the Juche orientation in ideology. Well, thank you, Hendry. Thank you, Hendrix. I do a lot of it. When we say that we established the Juche orientation in ideology, we precisely mean that we equip ourselves with the Juche idea and the party policy. The embodiment of the Juche idea, and establish the monolithic ideological system of the party. Oh yeah, it was disgusting. The Communist Party of Canada showed what it really is. A bourgeois social democrat party that's Trotskyist. Only when the whole party and the whole society are imbued with the monolithic ideological system will we be in a position to say that the Juche orientation in ideology has been firmly established. So you see, even in DPRK, where socialism is still being built, even there, complete Juche orientation and ideology has not been firmly established completely. They're still in the struggle. Although they were far into the struggle. Well, that's the struggle right now in Canada, NTC. And for many people, I know that there's lots of new parties that are emerging. Yeah. but they all have problems. The PSL, as I pointed out, has problems with its connections with some billionaire money, as well as some the leadership being weirdly like not visible. And there's a couple other things about PSL that weird me out. And then there's also, and then there's the Communist Party USA, who again, they have many problems with their party program. Many of the same problems actually that the Canadian Communist Party has in its party program. Not in addition to everything I mentioned, its party program also has like this idea that that white settlers will have their own national representation in a host of nations, Canada. Is there any decolonization Marxist orgs? I mean, in North America, there's not many, but we're trying. If you look at organizations like, you look at all native organizations that are organizing like IACI and other ones, yes. Juche roughly translate to self-determination? I mean, not really. That's an aspect of it. Because the struggle for self-determination is the struggle for independence. But Juche really is like a whole philosophical system. So it's like, that would be like trying to distill Marx down to like, you know, what is one word that describes Marx? I guess you could say revolution. And in that case, but Juche also applies to that as well. Beard. There you go. That's what Marx translates to. You know, well, the word Juche is related to the word Chajusong, which essentially means the independence from all fetters, whether it's social or natural, etc. It's Juche itself emerges from a combination, essentially, of Kim Il Sung's father, aim high philosophy, as well as Marxist-Leninist philosophy. That's the philosophical origins of Juche. And you could say that using the philosophy of Kim Il Sung's father, aim high, is a way of sort of critiquing and analyzing Marxism-Leninism itself as well. But I mean, self-reliance, the reason why self-reliance is so important for Juche is because self-reliance is so important for revolution. In order for us to have revolution is really like a whole bunch of independent liberation movements. And the way we get to world revolution is that. And each time, like China, Cuba, etc., they are engaged in the world revolution currently. That makes sense. That's why I think that's why socialism in one country is sort of like the way it's framed sometimes is kind of a misnomer. It's really not. It's really socialism in one country because socialism can't be exported or imported. It's by necessity socialism in one country. And the world economic system that the end goal of communism is, like one world economic system, where everybody is together under one government and one economic system, etc. That's not possible except for on the basis of voluntary mutual assurance, right? The imperialists try to make the whole world united, as it were, under the signposts of capital and capitalism and imperialism, right? But that can never be accepted. That will always be struggled against because it's tyranny. The same as like settler colonialism, and colonialism in general is tyranny and will always be struggled against. Exactly, Cinnamon. So how do you establish Juche in orientation? Well, to establish Juche orientation in thinking, one must be well versed in one's own things. What does this mean? Well, this means that if you are someone who knows the history of Russia, etc., so I'm trying to get a Westerner to take a step back from their wild indoctrination. Wouldn't it be at least honest to say jihad translates to struggle, Juche roughly translates to independence? I mean, yeah, you sure. As long as you make sure to just make it known that like it's not just a word that can be translated into one thing, right? It's Juche essentially means independence, but you also need to point out that it's a whole philosophy. And it's not, you don't have to go anything beyond that even. It translates to independence and is the philosophy of realizing independence. That's what it is. Red Falcon, welcome in, comrade. And so this sentence right here is telling you how you establish Juche orientation in thinking. That is, you must be well versed in one's own things. And if you are somebody... Well, let me read this part first, and then I'll get to my comment about it. Only when one knows one's things of one's country well, will one be able to solve all problems arising in the revolution and construction in an independent manner, and to suit one specific situation, and carry out the revolution and construction in conformity with the aspirations and requirements of one's people. Only then will one be able to also love one's country and people ardently and demonstrate a high degree of patriotic devotion and revolutionary enthusiasm. And this part is important for colonized people, for raising their revolutionary enthusiasm, and also to get rid of national nihilism, which right now among many colonized people in Americas, that's a serious problem, is national nihilism. That is thinking that your nation is defeated, whatever. That the guardian nation, aka the guardian, I say the settler nation, is the one that should be responsible, or the one that has won, or etc. All of these are expressions of national nihilism. Something that communists must combat. Koreans must know well Korean history, geography, economics, culture, and the custom of the Korean nation, and in particular, our party policy, its revolutionary history, and revolutionary traditions. Only then will they be able to establish the Juche orientation and become true Korean patriots and Korean communists. In order to establish Juche orientation in thinking, it is necessary to possess a high sense of national dignity and revolutionary pride. Now, I'll just point out that one thing that this is telling you, if you didn't catch that, is if you know more about the history of Russia, or you know more about the history of Cuba, or any other country, you know more about the writings of Marx and Engels and Lenin than you do about the actual struggles that are going on in your own country, or the revolutionary struggle of First Nations people. If you know more about all that than you do about your own struggles or native struggles in your area, then you need to change that. If you want to become a better revolutionary, okay, it's good that you know Marx and Engels and all that now. But let's now take a step sideways in a sense, and like actually study decolonial struggle and history and theory in your own area. People like Gerald Horne, Taeke Alfred, if you're in the Americas, as well as just studying the general history. Look at the treaties and the history of the treaties in your area. Wherever you are, there's going to be treaties that will be relevant to your area, and they will inform you about a lot of the struggle against colonial powers and for sovereignty. But yeah, I bet they don't either. So, if you know, so if you really know, if you know more about USSR than you know about your own struggles in your own country, I recommend changing that best you can. Yep, exactly, Cinnamon. A lot of people don't realize what nihilism actually means. They think it means just like not caring or something, and that's wrong. And actually, Nietzsche himself, if you look at Nietzsche, he's not saying don't care. He's saying God is dead, right? And that's the core. That's like the core thing. God is dead, and therefore all those morals and principles are decomposed, they're annihilated or non-existent. Not even non-existent, annihilated. Boy, I talked to locals about. Yep, Lat knows what's up. Lat knows what's up. That's right. Pop. Took a little trip to Silent Hill, huh? I'm glad you made it back. Glad you made it back from Silent Hill, though. No, nihilism, not allowed. Larry's anti-nihilism. The cat just keeps stretching behind me. It's good to have Bug back, isn't it, Bug? Good to have a Bug back. Well, thank you, Bug. Thank you so much. You're a very good kitty. She's right there under my armpit, by the way, in case you don't see her. Right here. Yeah, we have fog here all the time as well. I'm on a peninsula, a pretty small peninsula. So fog is very, very common. It's a piece of paper. Not that interesting. Oh, is it? Maybe it is that interesting? You're tired. Go back to sleep. Look at how tired you were. Fog is not common where you are, Merge. You must have pretty consistent temperatures. Alright, allow me to continue now. Without the sense of national pride that one's nation is inferior to none, without the pride and honor of the revolutionary people, it would be impossible to live up to one's conviction in an independent manner, uphold national independence and dignity, and emerge victorious in the difficult revolutionary struggle. Talking to all my Linu here, especially. A nation with a strong sense of national dignity and revolutionary pride is unconquerable. But a nation without this attribute is powerless. Don't worry, no, we're all good here. The peoples of small countries who have long suffered oppression by foreign forces need so much more than sense of national dignity and revolutionary pride. In the small countries where nihilism and flunkyism towards big powers are nationally deep-rooted as a result of the imperialist policy of assimilating colonies and obliterating their national culture. They must give special attention to the struggle to increase the sense of national dignity and revolutionary pride. I love the term flunkyism. We must ensure that all the Korean people cherish the dignity, the resourcefulness, and courageous Korean nation. The sense of pride and honor of a people who is making a revolution under the guidance of the great leader in particular. Yeah, I do. I diggity dog it. The task of establishing the Juche orientation in ideology requires the national culture should be developed and that the cultural and technical level of the masses be raised. We must build culture which is national in form and revolutionary and socialistic in content. Juche-oriented culture which agrees with the people's sentiments and is based on the working class line. This will make people's ideological and spiritual life healthy and facilitate the establishment of Juche orientation in ideology. In order to develop socialist national culture on a sound basis, we must thoroughly prevent imperialist cultural penetration and, at the same time, reject the tendency to return to the past and nihilistic inclination with regard to the heritage of national culture, inherit and develop its fine traditions, and critically adopt progressive elements of foreign culture, which are congenial to our people's sentiments. By the way, this is so important because this is literally the main factor that led to the USSR being overthrown, collapsing, if you will, because it essentially did not engage in revolutionary ideological education. The people, and by the way, Kim Jong-il is not the only one to point this out. You can look at Michael Pereni's talk, where he talks about the overthrow of USSR, the overthrow of communism in Eastern Europe is the talk, I think. And if you listen to that talk, I actually use a piece of that talk in my intro, and he talks about how Marx and Engels and Lenin, they were just doled out like Catholicism, right? Like a dogma. And they didn't establish new theories or new ideologies, despite Stalin literally specifying that we need to do that.
The revolution that feeds the children gets my support.
Not that talk, from the other talk. It's actually from the other talk. That's from the Yellow Parenti video. The other one where he says the other thing. That's from the talk I'm talking about.
To say that socialism doesn't work is to overlook the fact that it did work, and it worked for hundreds of millions of people.
That's from that talk I'm speaking of right now, where he talks about how doling it out like a catechism and like that led to serious stagnation, right? Now, some of his prescription is incorrect. And the other part was that they didn't build new culture there. And not only did they not build new culture, I mean, new culture was emerging on its own, but they weren't encouraging it to the rate they should, especially under successors to Stalin. And in addition to that lack of giving people ideological education and a lack of further consolidating and developing this emerging socialist culture, at the same time, they opened the mosquito net. They opened the floodgates, and they allowed reactionary ideology from the West to just penetrate the society without any sort of screening process or anything like this. And that was a huge problem. Hell yeah, Bob. Hell yes. Get us with that revolutionary gay culture. Hit us with it, Bob. You see what I'm saying? Like the lack of fostering, like of promoting that socialist culture's development, as well as then opening the floodgates to this reactionary ideological penetration by imperialism, led the people into this position where they like pined about capitalism, where they saw all the best aspects, quote unquote, all the best aspects of American society and none of the problems. And they even thought that they would be able to get capitalism while still retaining all of their socialist social wage benefits. We'll have cultural hour with Bob. Oh, the revolution inherently will be gay, Radisby. As well as inherently be gender abolitionist. Right? We're not, think about it. We are not revolutionizing and overcoming all of the backwards ideas, as Juche tells us to, if we're not getting rid of the understanding of gender, which is a reactionary understanding for explaining the position of the patriarchy, the position of quote unquote men, right? Gender abolition is absolutely an aspect of revolution. And that we could never say that we have reached a communist society before it's abolished, I think. I mean, as well as like strict categorization of sexuality, if you ask me. We have to overcome that also, where like, because like a big reason is like because it's persecuted, right? We basically, what I'm saying is we have to abolish the straights. Give them re-education. Exactly, Sam. They're all tools of oppression. As do I, Radisby. As do I. Because I think many of us. I mean, okay. Monogamy as like an institution, like nuclear marriage. Yeah, I think the idea, a lot of the ideas surrounding that. Now, should people be able to like have monogamous love with other people? Yeah, that should be allowed. But we need to combat the way that monogamy exists now. Like it has to be actively combated. Because right now it's like it's used as a tool of oppression. Exactly, Key. It will require a permit, and it would have to be like there would have to be laws that ensure that equality and voluntariness in the right to end a monogamous relationship without exception. Right? If that makes sense. I mean, it's just like the right to succession for nations, right? Like that same right has to exist in any relationship, whether it's two people who have agreed to enter into like a monogamous relationship with each other or whatever. But we do have to basically combat the idea of monogamy now as it being just the normal standard default thing. That has to be combated militantly. So hopefully that all makes sense to you all. Now, that's talking about culture. Now let's look on to the next thing. Hey Jay, welcome back. It is also necessary to make strenuous efforts to develop science. Exactly, Blatt. That's the point I was trying to make right there. Exactly. It's okay if that's your kink or that's your thing, or you want you found you think with somebody you have found true love. That's great. That's perfectly okay. But we have to combat it being the norm. And if that requires monogamous people to have like a special on paper agreement that's like these people, either one has the right to terminate the relationship at any given point, so on and so forth, then cool. That's what we'll have to do. Because I do also combat the idea, you know, the science essentialist idea that love is just a chemical in our brain. Because I'm someone who believes in Juche, I firmly stand with Juche and think Juche does scientifically explain the world. I cannot agree with anybody that love is a simple chemical thing in your brain. It's not. Humanity is not a simple, again, humanity is not a simple natural being. We're a social being, right? And our social consciousness is a collective social consciousness. Therefore, it's not just a chemical thing that causes you to love somebody else. It's your consciousness. It's everything that you have, your social interaction with society and other people in society, and your engagement with ideological education and with objective knowledge. All of these things help inform your consciousness, which also informs who you love. Hope that also makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's good. That's good. We need to make it like a universal thing, right? So hopefully that all makes sense to you all. Okay, now let's look at it is also necessary to make strenuous efforts to develop science and technology and raise the cultural and technical standards of the masses. This will enable the working people to become true masters of nature and society and get rid of the idea of worshipping and depending on others in the matter related to science and technology, and thoroughly establish the Juche orientation. See ya, Mama. Have a good day. If the Juche orientation is to be established in ideology, servility to big powers and all other outdated ideas should be opposed. Dated ideas like straightness, whiteness, individualism. Establishing the Juche orientation in thinking itself means an ideological emancipation of people from the fetters of outdated ideas, and an ideological revolution to establish a new Juche outlook on the world. In order to establish the Juche orientation in ideology, we must reject all sorts of outdated ideas, which are contrary to the Juche idea, and thoroughly eliminate servitude to big powers in particular. Oh yeah, absolutely, militia. Which I mean, that's the struggle we're in because people are so programmed to thinking a certain way, and regarding monogamy, with the thinking that anything that is not that, anybody who does not follow monogamy is an other. Is the way you're taught to think. Flunkyism is an attitude peculiar to slave serving and worshipping big powers and developed countries, and an attitude of nihilism which means looking down upon one's own country and nation and despising them. If one is inclined to be servile, one would be in the habit of groveling before others and following them. If others take to revisionism, one would follow suit. And if others adopt dogmatism, one would act likewise. As the leader said, if a person falls into flunkyism, he would become a fool. If a nation is servile to big power, the country would go to ruin. And if a party is subservient to big powers, it would make a mess of the revolution and construction. What is most harmful and dangerous at present is flunkyism towards US imperialism in particular. This servility, which is expressed in the fear and worship of the United States, is doing a great harm to the revolutionary struggle of the people. The harmfulness of this servility is most notable in South Korea today. Servility to the US imperialism, which has been spread by the US imperialist aggressors and their stooges, is the most harmful ideological poison, which is paralyzing people's national and class consciousness in South Korea, trampling upon their precious cultural heritage and beautiful customs of our nation. Unless the struggle is intensified to oppose the fear, worship of the United States among the South Korean people and to heighten their spirit of national independence, neither the victory of the South Korean Revolution nor the independent reunification of the country would be possible. The struggle to establish Juche orientation and oppose flunkyism towards big powers is a serious question on which the destiny of the revolution depends. We will continue to intensify the struggle to eliminate flunkyism and establish the Juche orientation in ideology, and thus guarantee the ultimate victory of the Korean Revolution. Just in time for the ad break.